and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly.
So I just wanted to make everyone aware.
Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you.
April 3rd, 10th, at noon. Can we Take roll call.
Yes, we can. Josh Lunger. Here. Kevin Whistling. Craig Clark. Rick Wynn.
Here.
Chris Mathis. Here. Laura Sesa. Here. Chad Patton. Here. Stefan Palaka. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe we have a quorum.
All right, great. So to members of the public, welcome to the GR Commission meeting. We provide input on mobility-related activities and programs to department staff and also make recommendations to the City Commission on policies related to these activities. You have 2 opportunities where you can provide comments. One is related to items on the agenda during the first public comment period. At the end of the meeting, you can also provide general comments. We're not able to respond to them directly, but we do listen and use your feedback to inform our future decisions. So we have our agenda in front of us. Is there anything anyone wants to add to this agenda?
Today's agenda?
Today.
Yes. I would love to discuss a request I received from a neighborhood association to utilize one of our parking lots for a farmer's market, and then maybe some background on if we have any infrastructure in place of how we process those requests.
Okay, we'll do put that just after our discussions on micro-mobility.
Sounds good.
If you can remind me. Okay. So our first order of business are approval of the minutes from March 6, 2025. They were in our packets. Are there any corrections or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now I will open up to the first public comment period. If there's anyone that would like to step forward, now is your chance. Okay, seeing none, I'll close that. Next are the action items. We have a parking incentive, 19 Holdings LLC, Gimmy's Pub. You want to cue this up? It was in our packet. Do you want to have any other comments on it? Or?
Sure. So it's in your packet, and what we'll need to do is, make a motion and then second that, and then have a discussion. But the background is in your packet. There has been an incentive program policy in place where if you're a new business to downtown and you have signed a 5-year lease, you can get a 50% discount for 6 months, and a 5-year lease or greater is 50% discount on your monthly parking for a full year. The last time we approved something in this program was 2015. It was brought to my attention that we still have this program in. It's not this, Colin, by the way. It's the wrong thing. We haven't utilized this program in the last about 10 years. We had a request, Gimmy's, a business that just came to downtown to provide 50% parking. They've signed a 10-year lease. That's what's before you to be approved. And it is a 50% incentive for 1 year at a current monthly parking rate of $143 a space. They are requesting, I believe, 7 spaces. Yes. And the total value of the incentive is $6,006. Staff took a look at this. We met with the business, and we are recommending approval of this incentive, but we wanted to bring it to you all. You all are the approvers on whether or not we can offer this, whether or not to offer this incentive. And then the other thing just to know is that in 2020, there was a discussion here at this body to establish a working group to review and update the parking incentive plan. I spoke with the city's economic development director. She's very interested in having that conversation and would like to support some discussion around that. I do think there's some opportunities for update. In the meantime, we have had a request, and as it stands, the current policy, we could offer a 1 year 50% discount on these 7 monthly parking spaces, but it is up to you to decide. So.
I'd like to motion to discuss the the request.
Or to approve?
To discuss and potentially approve.
What you'll do is you'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
And then you'll have discussion, and then you'll vote. Does that make sense? And during the discussion, you can kind of ask your questions and things.
So we're approving it before we discuss it?
Nope, you're
Okay.
making a motion to approve it, and then
Okay.
you have a discussion, and
I
then
see.
you vote. Does that make sense? I know it
Yes.
sounds odd, but yeah, it's just,
Okay. Motion to approve.
there you go.
Okay.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, discussion.
I'm curious, does this program, doesn't seem like it's been used, obviously, in 10 years. Does that have an associated cost to keep it on the books?
You mean like an administrative cost
Yeah,
of the
like
program?
like as a staff member.
So it is one of these things that it's pretty simple for us to do in our financial software. We just put a discount in. There are times when we do different things for customers, like for example, if let's say a monthly late fee happened because someone didn't pay their monthly bill or something. There are cases where maybe that was an error and we may waive that fee or we may credit that back. So we do things like that in our financial system all the time. And I use that as an example to say, like, this wouldn't be something that we go in and one time do. We'd just set it up for that, and then it would end at a certain date, and then there would be 100% of the cost after the 1 year. And we just
Okay.
put it in our system.
So negligible at best.
Yeah, we have staff that does this
Yep.
for you. Pretty
Okay.
good.
So really the only cost of it would be that 50% revenue we're losing for a year.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The other potential cost and administrative cost is further down the line. If we go to take a look and we do have a working group and we talk about an update to this incentive program, that's where, you would have some staff time involved in having those discussions and helping craft, updates to the incentive. So that's where I would see kind of more of your administrative costs. But those again is like, it's part of the work, part of the job that we do here to help support you all.
Understood. Thanks.
Yep.
How is this payment being made? Is this a monthly recurring payment over that time? Are they paying it up front, half, or?
Typically, our customers pay monthly for the monthly bills because what they are is they're just month-to-month leases,
Right.
kind of, if you think about it. So they do, most folks do like an auto payment.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was something special because of these terms, there was a different pay structure or not, so.
Not currently, we treat them like any other package. And maybe you all may not know, but the way that we do monthlies is that you can do monthlies as an individual. Like I can have a monthly pass that I pay for every month in a certain facility, or a business can have an account with us and they pay for all of them.
Right.
And that's the way this is they've set it up like they have a business account,
Got it.
that kind of thing. So, and that's like a choice that you can make with us, and whatever a customer's preference is, whatever's easiest for them.
Any other questions or comments?
Mentions that this would be for staff parking. I mean, I'm sure there's no way for us to enforce anything like this, but do we know, like, if they intend to provide the parking to their employees for free and they pay for it, or if they're going to pass that on to the employees?
So we
pay for
do
parking?
enforce monthly parking. So the permit, the monthly parking card is issued to a particular, it's like issued to the business. So they have their 7 cards, and it's it tags in and out of the parking garage. This is the Ottawa Fulton. So you can't get in without your card. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if they're like using, like if they're going to pass the costs on to the employee to pay for, like.
Oh, that I don't know. That would be a business decision.
I'm sure we can't control it. I was just wondering.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I mean, since we haven't seen, use of this policy in so long, like, was there like a lack of interest that happened? Were we not doing the same outreach anymore for the program with new businesses? Did they just find that this wasn't something they wanted to do when new businesses came in? I'm wondering like how we sort of engage with them and why it's not popular anymore.
So the policy was written in 1995. And so as I understand the policy back in 1995, there was a lot of investment, and you all probably just know this being Grand Rapidians, is that there was a lot of investment. Maybe Rick's got even more context and history around this, but there's a lot of investment in bringing folks to downtown. And one of the ways that the city did that was using parking as that kind of economic development tool. And this was one of the programs that we had. I don't have any context for you on the history since 1995 of how it was utilized and how much, and how successful it was and things. But to date, we do have competition, or we have lots of demand for the facilities that are currently in the policy. The current facilities in the policy are named as they're in here specifically. I think it's 4. And the Government Center ramp, the Ottawa Fulton ramp, Pearl Ionia ramp, and the Western Commerce ramp. So what is one of the things that I would love to hear if you all decide to bring this to a working group and kind of discuss more updates is, should this be something that's expanded to other facilities instead of just these 4 in this area? And that I think that warrants a discussion from several different perspectives. But back to like the history of how much it was utilized and kind of what was the ROI, if you will, on the program. Because it's been so long, I do think that would be great, and I could try and figure out that information for y'all if we decide to have like a discussion about that. But I do think that we're in a totally different environment now, and some sort of incentive plan may have different goals. Instead of trying to fill the parking decks, the goal might be, and I'm just brainstorming, it might be something like you want to support small business. You want to support, a type of development or something. You know what I'm saying? Something that meets city goals, that helps incentivize city goals and strategic goals and things like that. That's what we would tie something like this back to. Does that make more sense? Yeah. And I think that the original policy is about 1995's problems and not today's challenges.
I have to say I totally agree with Jessica's sentiments on this. The amount of conversations I've had with small businesses, the amount of times I've spoken with the city on behalf of a small business around parking and how it's been handled up to this point has been very challenging for a lot of businesses, because those waiters, waitresses, staff, whatever, they're paying to park for 10 hours by the hour all day long, and that business doesn't pay for that. So they have to pay for their parking plus have a life outside of all that, which you're doing that 4, 5, 6 days a week. It becomes a really, really big cost over the course of a month for a lot of staff that have to work downtown, which then forces them to not drive downtown anymore. They take the Rapid or another form of transportation to get downtown, but there's still associated costs with that has to be paid every month as well. So having something that allows that business to offer an incentive, if the business can afford it, to offer parking to that staff is a huge incentive, which now increases their retention, helps with hiring the right people. I mean, there's so many benefits I think can come from that by leveraging that for that small business that can afford it.
I appreciate that point. I just want to push back also on, I guess there are lots of costs with getting cars into our downtown as well. Increased traffic, emissions, wear and tear on our streets. So, there are plenty of benefits. There are also plenty of costs as well. So,
Agreed.
Certainly look forward to that working group.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where we have businesses that are opening later in the day because they can't afford to staff during the day.
Wow.
Because of cost and parking. So instead of opening at 11 or 12, they open at 4. But now the owner of that business has to figure out how to make the bills, how to cover overhead every month, knowing that they're only open from 4 to 10 versus 11 to 10 or 11 to 11 because of some of these staffing issues around parking. So it's pros and cons, right? Both ways, totally. Right? We both have an argument as far as that goes. I think it's just looking at and finding compromise in between, but it is definitely an ongoing issue that has been going for quite some time. And I hear a lot of those conversations from a lot of the businesses, in the area and what they have to deal with. And I think that's the part that has not really truly been a big conversation for us over the years, but is an ongoing issue. So I appreciate it being brought up.
I fully support having a working group to further go over and update this plan and decide what to do with it. I think, not to derail the conversation away from the current approval, but I would mention that you mentioned like the Rapid and having the cost for that. I believe a monthly pass for the Rapid is like $50. It went up to 60. Okay, I didn't know what the current update was. And I think at the very least, what I would like to see in the future for this would be, if a business does decide that this is something that they wanted to do, I would like to see some sort of concurrent requirement that they have incentives for employees who do decide to take alternative forms of transit. You know, if that is the Rapid, like if we're paying for parking for employees, we should be covering an employee's bus pass. If it's bike parking, that obviously doesn't have as many costs as parking a car. We can have discussions about what that incentive might look like.
I would push back on that and say that's a bit of a reach for us to now get involved and to give control over how a business chooses to spend their resources and make their investment in their staff. That's a bit of a push. Because we don't know enough of their overhead or what their cost of running the business is. I mean, I've got businesses downtown that they've tried to have staff that can share a parking space because the employee can't afford it, the business can't afford it because they're opening at 4 o'clock versus earlier in the day and allowing that revenue to come in. So instead of trying to buy multiple spaces, they try to share a space and rotate staff out of that one space. So it's so many variables that go into this for a business to have to figure out. And for us to have a say in how they spend that money to do that, I think is a bit of a reach.
How they spend that money by incentivizing the parking. So in my opinion, it is well within our right to require some engagement, let's say with the Rapid or some thought put into that. But I understand what you're saying.
3 volunteers.
Yeah, that working group.
I say too that there's different ways to do it. Like, I mean, Ann Arbor has a kind of pass program where downtown employers take a part and they can provide in passes, and there's some kind of arrangement work does. So there's more than one way to provide complementary things too that we could look at in other models.
If there's a way to do it complimentary, I'm 100% open to what that could look like to support the business and to support the staff that need it. Absolutely.
And to your point regarding, what we can require of a business, I agree that, we can't be like too much of a strong hand on the scale. But I will say that, having a transportation management plan is required by the Planning Commission for approvals of many different types of special land use. So I would say that this would be in the realm of what the Planning Commission does and requires.
It's an interesting dilemma that we have, parking, because we're also have initiatives to reduce the amount of cars that are coming into downtown and encouraging people to bike and or walk and or ride the bus. But at the same time, people are going to drive. We have to deal with that as well. So
You deal with other issues around that where I work downtown, my kids are in daycare at the YMCA. The logistics around how to pull that off and using rideshare to do that is difficult. That's challenging to asking a single mother to do that every single day, versus just riding, driving, getting it done, and having some efficiency and conveniency on top of that. But again, I think there's room to kind of weigh pros and cons of both of those and find a balance. But I do think that that's a contributing factor as to why she would prefer to drive over using a rideshare service.
That example you just used really helps us identify gaps in the transit that we provide too, and stuff like that.
all great discussions. I would like to try to land this plane.
Can I just say that if we do a working group, it needs to include stakeholders that have employees using the service, as well as obviously commercial real estate folks who are working and trying to relocate employers downtown, especially with the pressures we're seeing right now. There's a lot more folks who will probably be closing their doors in the next 6 months.
Absolutely.
And then I would like to call the question, Mr. Chair.
We're landing this plane?
Yep.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and then you will reach out for volunteers for this working group?
So hopefully we just passed this parking incentive.
Yep. We did.
Okay, good. And yes, I made a note. Sounds like consensus here, you all would like to see a working group established, and we will take care of that for you.
If I could throw one more thing to that, I would say
Yeah.
with the piece of who's in the room, be mindful that some of those businesses have staff that have to catch the ride here, park, and then walk another mile to get to the office, right? That's another factor that needs to be taken into consideration on how they utilize that service.
Right. So I'm just going to take a look back at our commission rules, you know, how our meeting rules, and make sure how working groups are established. I think they are just members of the commission, and then we can talk about, you know, I think what you all are wanting to make sure is that we engage stakeholders as we have this discussion so that you have the right information to consider. So let me go back and work with staff and kind of figure out the best way to establish that with all of your input here today, and then we'll come back. And also, I do have your board rules being looked at, so we'll have those kind of cleaned up too. So I just double check that we're doing the right procedure. So, but thank you. I will work on that and report back to you all next
Okay,
month.
sounds good. Next is the residential parking permit policy updates.
A quick note to all of us in the room. The microphone is for our online and streaming and AV and video, so you're not going to hear Erin's voice amplified at all. So if you need her to speak up, just say that. Otherwise, you're not going to hear anything through a speaker. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Microphone, no feedback.
You got it.
So, hello again. Once more, I come before you to discuss our residential parking permit policy. I'm gonna start with a couple points of order, then do a quick walkthrough of what we've discussed before. I think you're all quite well versed in that. And then get into updates from our last meeting. So you had back there a separate copy of the policy that has a couple edits to the one that you received. These are all very minor and very thanks to a incredibly detail-oriented attorney that we have at the city who caught a lot of little tiny places where we could revise and change language to make things better. So there was one significant change, which was one area where we had not changed the 60% to 51% threshold that we decided to adjust at the last meeting. And outside of that, there were small things around sort of adding sole discretion, saying must instead of shall, moving things around. We added a list of the streets in Noble. And other changes like that were minor and shouldn't change at all the policy that you've read previously if you've looked through it before today. So that's the version you received versus the print one in front of you. And the print one in front of you is what would be passing with those minor edits. A couple months ago, we came to you with a policy that we had been working on for quite some time based on surveys, conversations with other communities, discussions with our administrative staff, with our parking enforcement staff, our parking team, and wonderful research by members of my team. Very proud of the work that we've done, and I think it was really close. I am confident that the policy we're bringing before you today is a fantastic tool. There's no perfect way to do parking. We all know this comes with trade-offs, but to take us to the next step and next iteration of considering this policy. So just to go back to that, the major changes that we had discussed at that meeting that I'm not going to go over in full, but they're in the Appendix B in the back of your memo here. Going back to the resident-led initiation process, based on discussion, that pivot from a 60% to a 51% threshold for consideration of a zone. A likewise resident-led zone modification or dissolution process, some adjustments to permit types and uses, most namely a resident being able to get more than one in instances where they had a frequent visitor, et cetera, as well as moving to 6 passes per household, which aligns with zoning changes, and then some earlier incidental and compliance language adjustments. So those were things we sort of had broad consensus on, and then some of the main things that we discussed at our last meeting included, let's see here, permit pricing, limits around the permits, costs of administering the program, our mechanisms for issuing permits and enforcement, so whether there might be paper, hard copies, license plate readers for enforcement, et cetera, and then impact on businesses and how businesses can be supported through this type of program or accommodated. So we went back, read through the policy in full, connected with some of the communities we'd connected with before, conducted additional research and interviews to make some small changes to the policy that we believe address these issues. So following the discussion, as I mentioned, moving the resident-led initiation threshold from 60% to a 51% majority. And then I really appreciated the conversation about supporting and accommodating businesses, because we know with so many things with parking, it's such a challenge to try to fit everyone. And it gave us the opportunity to talk more about sort of all of the tools that are in our parking toolkit to support businesses. So anytime that we're looking at something like this, we'll also be looking at the adjacent commercial institutions for if it makes sense to add meters, to have temporary 1 or 2 hour parking zones, loading zones, et cetera. So those remain concurrent tools that we would make available for businesses in the area. We also sort of have an expanded availability for non-resident monthly permits to be made available, and establish that this is something like the pricing for permits that could be determined based on the zone and the unique needs and characteristics of the zone. Just some clarifying information here about why there's 6 permits per household, and that aligns with updates to the city's zoning code. We do have some discretion if we hear someone telling us there's a ridiculous number of permits coming out of one household, or that they can't get one, to make some adjustments on a case-by-case basis. So we're confident that this threshold is appropriate. And then recognizing that there are trade-offs to the use of license plate readers, we do believe that this is the best tool for us to use in evaluation and enforcement of parking in these zones. It is the industry standard. It is something that our department is already doing. That does mean that we can't do a sort of like hang tag process, but there are ways to make it pretty easy for people to go in, enter a license plate, and get a quick day pass. And we do also have the addition of those free or compensated guest passes for each renewal period. We also had some broader theoretical discussion about, do we charge for this? What do we charge for it? What is people's right to have priority access to the public right of way as private property owners? And people have a range of opinions about this. And our city's goals include customer service and wanting to serve our residents, and also equity, and what does equity mean for our public spaces. And there aren't easy answers to this, but we do maintain that it is appropriate to charge for this program from a practical and stewardship of public resources standpoint, as well as from making it a sort of tenable, sustainable program that doesn't kind of have cascading impacts of interest and corresponding potential strain on our resources and on our ability to do other work. Related to that, we received a question about the cost of implementing the program. All in total, so the funding that we receive, or the revenue we received from the program is, where did I put that? I think it's in an appendix. Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
So in the Noble RPP zone, We get $6,000 in revenue from permits. It costs us $20,000 in administration and enforcement. And again, this isn't something that you can allocate $20,000 to. This amount of money is equivalent to our staff's time and our enforcement staff's ability to do that or to do something else, adding up to a net $14,000 a year cost just for the Noble RPP program. To establish a new program of a similar size, we estimate $25,000 to $35,000 in staff time, the cost to install signs, and that leads us to a $45,000 to $60,000 cost to establish an RPP. And again, a lot of that's in staff time. That's our planning, administrative, and enforcement staff not doing other things, sort of not something that we can allocate additional resources for. So I was glad to receive this question. We really didn't know. But that's the resources that go into making this happen. So we think $30 permit is a pretty good deal for people. So I'll just say, and I'm kind of reading this off the last paragraph, but you can see it throughout, that implementing this kind of program comes with trade-offs. We have a lot of great tools to support and accommodate businesses, but the easiest way for everybody to access parking on a level playing field is for them to all pay or for it to all be free. So, this is a system that chooses winners and losers, and it prioritizes convenience for residents, and then kind of needing to figure out how to support everybody else. So we think this policy is very well thought out, does a great job of that, and is a great tool to at least get us to the next stage of consideration, which will be resident-led and initiated, and I'm sure bring forward, whenever it happens, another very robust, interesting, and engaged process to consider what we do from there. Questions?
I think we need to do an action and then discussion, and Aaron can help lead us through any questions anyone has.
We're looking for approval of these updates.
Yeah, this is an action item.
Okay. So we would entertain a motion to approve this updated residential parking permit policy.
Second.
And we'll open it up for discussion. Any questions on this? Yes.
I just got a chance last time with that. I see the 51%, so if Chris comes in with all these signatures, how do we know it's 51%? Do we have that good records as a city? I'm just wondering how much staff time will go in just to verifying these are the right people, they live there, and do each household get one signature? Do they get two if there's 4 adults? If they get 4, what's the process there?
Yes, this is a question that I had and was rather worried about, and unfortunately Max Gillis is not here today,
Okay.
but he reassured me that we actually have pretty good ways of understanding who resides at households and can check that pretty well. I don't know what our sort of burden of proof would be in terms of signature verification, but I know people who do that, so that is potentially something that we can look at. I'm also assuming, I know that not every area has a neighborhood association, but we would be able to kind of if there is a neighborhood association, get a pulse on the level of support and interest to verify that it's not just some guy coming forward with a list of scribbles.
Any other questions?
I have a few. So, first of all, thank you for the analysis of everything and the costs associated. I think that's really helpful for us to look at. I appreciate the research with peer cities. I think that was something that I was hoping to see, so I like that that's there. I'm wondering, you mentioned that your review of the peer cities included their criteria to evaluate a zone, establish a zone, the role of residents, size, and timelines. I'm just wondering if that's some information you can share with us, because I see that we have the information from them about the cost and types of permits and how it's enforced and when, but I would like to know how these cities are establishing their zones, because that's sort of what we're looking at here as well.
Yeah, we had some of that detailed in the presentation when we last spoke about this, but I can verify the level of detail and see if we can break that out for you a little bit more. I tried to get just a giant matrix that we could fit on one slide, and it just...
It's hard. The questions I have are harder to put in a chart, right? So, and then my other
did
question.
see overwhelmingly that it was resident
Okay.
initiated, and I believe the threshold was between 50 and 75% maybe support from residents to trigger a review process.
Then my other question is, so with the resident-led initiation, are we still going to be doing any like outreach about the program? Are we going to be speaking with neighborhood associations so like at least people are aware that it is something that they can initiate?
Yeah, well, we will make information available to the neighborhood associations, to the public on our website about this process. And then if we receive any inquiries, we'll have very clearly available, accessible information for people about what that looks like. So here's what you would need to do, here's the requirements, nice things like that pretty, chart we had of the streets and everything like that. And then we're also, like anything else, available to talk to citizens if they have inquiries about any number of different things. So we can talk them through some of that stuff as well. There's also, within the policy itself, some very detailed outlining of what the sort of public outreach and engagement process would look like through the process of evaluating and developing a zone.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries as well.
That's gotta feel good.
It's so good.
Discussions, micro mobility, community engagement presentation.
We're just taking a moment of silence. Like, are you sure you're ready for me? Trent, thanks for being here. You all, we are really excited to talk about this. I don't know if you recall, but shortly after I've almost been here a year, and shortly after I got here, the first thing is I had to go to Public Safety Committee and talk about micromobility and public safety around micromobility, and it's all been recorded for all of humanity. But one of the things that we've been working really hard at Mobile GR is pairing up with our friends at Fire and EMS and GRPD as we are working through those safety questions around micromobility. There's lots of different challenges and concerns, and there's perceived safety risks as well as real ones. And Trent and Aaron and the whole team over at Mobile GR, as well as John Bartlett, our traffic engineer, have been looking at this for several years, and we now have a micromobility program that's 3-4 years?
It's 5.
We're going into 5 now. And so Trent takes care of that program and really oversees a lot of the analysis. And so today what we want to make sure that you have an update on is what we are doing around safety messaging. And then Trent, of course, has always got great information around the program in general, but I just wanted to tee that all up to remind you all that there's been several different conversations happening at the commission level, at public safety, and then also here with you all. And it's getting warm, I think. And so we're going to have a fleet that's going to expand here if it hasn't already, and Trent will give us an update. And so we wanted to inform you guys on what we're doing as far as safety messaging and engaging with our friends all over the community that use micromobility as well as interact with them. So thank you, Trent.
Yeah, thanks for the intro. Yes, so as a quick preface to this isn't in the slides, just wanted to give a quick early season update. It is only April, so things are still, revving up for our fleet size. Lime is rolling out the fleet. In March, we had some pretty significant ridership. One tidbit I thought was quite interesting, that was the weekend of St. Patrick's Day, which, if I remember correctly, was pretty warm. Because of the warm weather, decent fleet size already, Grand Rapids was actually in the top 30 cities worldwide for ridership that weekend, which was a Pretty interesting weekend for us to hop up into the leaderboard up there, which I thought was just a cool tidbit to share with everyone. But on that, yeah, just wanted to share a bit about what we're going to be doing over the coming months to engage with our residents and visitors about safety and affordability of micromobility. Background of this is old news to all of you, but this is a growing transportation mode in Grand Rapids. Both private and shared forms of this are on the rise. Our Strava Metro data, which measures a lot of private trips on privately owned bicycles and scooters, saw almost a 10% increase in 2023 to 2024 in private ridership. And then our shared micromobility program is obviously, growing year over year and is on track to do so again in 2025. So with those things in mind, along with our city and department goals, we thought that highlighting safety and affordability to our users and residents were the two key points we really wanted to focus on this year. So for safety, we are kind of doing something we've never done before, or at least not on this scale, and launching a pretty substantial safety campaign this year. This is a joint effort between our office, Office of Communications, and GRPD, and also Lime, to run for about 6 months or so, April through September, maybe go a little bit longer than that, depending on some community events. But this is going to provide us with a variety of engagement opportunities that we don't normally do throughout a given season. So these are digital materials, print materials, and some community events. What are we really wanting to communicate through this? There's a lot that we could say, and we, through conversations, decided to boil it down to what are the real basics that we want everyone to understand. If they're a rider, if they're a driver on the road, what is it we want people to really take home and to put into use? So for riders, we want people to ride with the flow of traffic, keep off of sidewalks and designated walk your wheel zones such as we have downtown. We want to encourage people to wear a helmet. And we want to reinforce those general rules of the road that maybe someone on a bicycle doesn't think that they have to stop at every red light or every four-way stop or ride with the flow of traffic, or this is where you should ride in the travel lane and this is how you should signal. So reinforcing some of those real basics of safe riding practices. And as well for drivers, everyone, this is a shared space on the road. And so we need to be talking to everyone about how should I in my car interact with bicycle and scooter users in the road. Locally we have some laws that require a larger space for passing bicycles in the street. Normally it's only 3 feet, I believe, throughout the state of Michigan, and here it's 5 feet passing space that we need. So reinforcing that to people that, this is a law that you could be given a ticket for or cited for. It's an important thing for safety for everyone on the street, and reinforcing those rules throughout this campaign. A lot of these digital materials are maybe yet to be determined on exactly what elements they'll include, but these are the broad strokes of what we're looking to accomplish through these materials. For digital, we're looking to do videos and graphics. The videos would be some sort of safety overview done by our department, maybe how-tos and some demonstrations with GRPD. And this will highlight safety for all micromobility users, including Lime users and private riders, as our ordinance does not really delineate those two. The same rules apply to anyone, whether on a Lime bike or their own bike. So we want to make sure that this is really highlighting safety for everyone on the road. And for graphics, these are going to be shared through our social media, and our team does a great job of putting those together, just highlighting a variety of key safety tips that we want to really drive home from those key messages over this campaign. Our print materials are mainly going to be flyers and handouts. These will be safety checklists highlighting the key messages of the program, simple infographics of where you should be riding. If you want to make a left turn, what's the safe way to do that? What sort of signaling is appropriate? As well as a summary of some of our local ordinances and regulations. As I mentioned, the 5 feet passing rule. Some users, even with our signage downtown, might not be familiar with our sidewalk riding ordinance. So just kind of reinforcing some of those things that we've done in recent years to increase safety. And community events. These are still also being determined, but it will involve some sort of press release or story, an official statement with GRPD, really focusing on education first, but letting people know that these are, offenses that you could be cited for if you're breaking these rules. If you're riding downtown on the sidewalk, you can be given a $25 citation. Letting people know that that's a reality, but focusing on education first to let people know the rules of the road. Also tabling at events, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to do this with city staff, GRPD, and Lime. hand out some of our printed materials, demonstrate safe riding principles, have Lime devices there that people can test out and try and practice signaling and do all those sorts of demonstrations, and also helmet fittings and giveaways if those are applicable to the certain event. Not only safety, but affordability is also something we want to keep on the forefront of our minds. After the affordability program last year, we want to keep stoking that ridership among Lime Access users. So we last week, already started some more Lime Access promotion to get the word out about that program for anyone who wasn't in the know last year, who didn't know that was happening. We want to let people know that Lime Access is still available at 50% off, and we want to see how that sort of standard promotion, what sort of impact that causes with enrollments and ridership over these coming months. So I'll obviously be coming back to let you know the impacts of that promotion. But that's ongoing right now and will be most likely going through the month of May. So for safety, we're looking to still finalize those campaign materials and create video content, identify our summer events, some of which have already started to come together. And then in the summer, I'll come back and share a mid-campaign update with you all, as well as post-campaign, maybe in the mid to late fall, after we've done some more surveying with users and finished all of our outreach events. And for affordability, we're going to keep promoting Lime Access throughout the month of April and May. I'll report back on the impact and findings of that promotion effort. And then we want to look a bit more future of, what are the policy recommendations we want to make for future affordability program? What do we want to budget for in the future? What's the most impactful model for our users and residents to be able to continue getting around town in a safe and affordable manner? So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll go first. Thanks, Trent. That was great. I was curious, I have a couple questions. One surrounding how we're going to measure the results of the safety campaign.
And then two, I was wondering if you might be able to describe any efforts by the police department perhaps to enforce these rules.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, so for measuring success, that's a great question. There's a couple different things that we can do. The first simplest thing for us to measure is just exposure to our resources and materials. I can very clearly come back to you and say, we had 100,000 views on our safe riding practices for riding downtown video that we created. So it's reached that many people, and here's where they live in relationship to Grand Rapids, and look at our exposure and communication that way. So that's one way that we're looking to do this, is we want to make people aware of these rules and what we're trying to do. The second piece of it is a bit more nuanced, and that's actually measuring compliance. Right now we have, as I've shared in previous reports, a pretty statistically safe micromobility program. But as Jessica mentioned, there is still that perceived lack of safety. So what can we do to measure changes in people's perceptions of how safe the program is? So that could be, as I mentioned, some surveys. I think we'll try to do brief pulse surveys with the community early on and later in the program to see what they're perceiving to be any changes in user behavior. Also get some anecdotal feedback. Maybe in May, if we do a survey, I might say, oh yeah, I usually ride on the sidewalk because I feel like that's safest. But then if you ask me again in October, well, actually, I've been trying to ride in the street and it feels much safer and I'm able to move much more effectively. And that would be, a very measurable thing that we could say that this made an impact with X number of users for changing their behavior. For the GRPD side of it, one great idea that Max Gillis had, and this is something that we've still been discussing with GRPD, so I'm not sure if we're going to do it yet, but it's sort of a pseudo enforcement event of, for one day, maybe have really strict enforcement of the sidewalk riding ordinance downtown. He always brings up a great example from Grand Haven, where they handed out some very high amount of ticket for going in the water on a red flag day, and they did it for one day, and then basically no one went in the water on red flag days because they were so scared of getting a ticket. So doing something like that where we get some press coverage of today the police department is cracking down on every person that's on the sidewalk, and here's a $20 ticket, here's a $20 ticket, and really getting that word out of that's something that can happen as a user. So that's one way to go about it, and I think after we do the education of this program, GRPD will be in a much better place to actually start enforcing, because there will be so much awareness in the community about what the safe rules are.
I like that idea. I want to make sure it happens after,
Totally.
after
Totally.
we tell everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
But what's the point of having a law on the books if it's not enforced?
Right,
So,
exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just a question there. Are you working with city streets and, I mean, in order to get some better protection for these bike lanes, et cetera?
As far as like infrastructure
Yeah.
is concerned? Yes. I mean, so that's always front of mind for other folks of our team who aren't even here today. There's a lot of improvements and investments going into downtown specifically that I know of. So, as those come more into play, probably a lot of our communications will maybe change. A lot of our streets downtown right now don't have protected infrastructure. If that's different in a few years, then, how do you use a protected bike lane? How do you enter and exit it? What's the appropriate way for riding on the raised bike path that's going to be on Division near the sidewalk? Where should you ride? What's for pedestrians? So that'll sort of inform changes in our communications as we move forward, but that's always a tandem effort.
Yeah, I have
Yes.
a question related to that. I mean, I guess it's a comment. So I appreciate the safety implications of, wanting to get the scooters off the sidewalk. I really understand, that this is something that we want to do. I do want to say, though, to your point, there are no protected bike lanes downtown.
Sure.
There are hardly even painted bike lanes downtown. So just, in my opinion, I believe that ordinance put the cart before the horse and said, like, you need to get off the sidewalk, but we're not going to give you any safe place to go. So that is unfortunate for me. So what I would like to see from the campaign would be something like you said, highlighting the efforts of the city to put in these protected facilities like Division. Like, I think we should be highlighting that, like saying, this isn't ready now, but for next year when you're doing this, you're going to have this facility, and like this is something that you should be doing. Another comment I have is I like the idea of having like the day where you just issue all the citations for everything, but I think it would be unfair to do that only for the micromobility and not for drivers downtown. Because, I mean, just as someone who bikes and walks downtown all the time, I can tell you that there is a huge issue with drivers not stopping before a crosswalk and turning right on red without stopping. All of these types of violations that drivers now feel that they can just do because no one will stop them. I think that if we're going to have a day of enforcing rules for scooters, we need to have a day of enforcing rules for drivers as well. And I think that needs to be a huge part of the safety campaign also.
Yeah, totally. That's a great comment. I appreciate that. Yeah, and if I can make a quick response too about the sidewalk riding, I totally agree with you that in some of the areas of downtown specifically, it is a little bit cart before the horse, just like you said, and I've had that feedback from other groups as well. I think our intention with it is that in most of the downtown where that ordinance is being enforced, the speed limits, at least themselves, how people drive is kind of another aspect, but the speed limits themselves are low. Most of the streets are relatively safe. I bike on them. Even with the minimal infrastructure they're relatively safe. There is also language in the ordinance, and this can be part of our communication as well. We don't want this to be just a scapegoat for everyone. But if road conditions are unsafe, even in a walk your wheels area, you are encouraged to ride on the sidewalk. If it's just for high speed traffic or whatever reason unsafe to be in the street. We do want people to have the flexibility in the moment to ride where is safest, even if that doesn't necessarily align with the ordinance. Because we would rather have people be safe than follow every letter. Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Good report. Thank you. Next, did you want to bring up your?
I'd love to.
Yes.
So, some background. A couple weeks ago, I received a request from the
Creston Farmers Market, which is essentially a subcommittee of the Creston Neighborhood Association. For everyone's wherewithal, I am a board member there as well. They kind of informed me of their path for requesting use of a lot. I believe it's 113 Caledonia, but essentially it's the lot that's on the west side of Plainfield, near the end of Coit Avenue. They were requesting to use this lot once a week between the months of May and September for a farmer's market that the neighborhood is putting on. They requested it through the Office of Special Events, who then forwarded them to Mobile GR, or I guess OSE talked to Mobile GR, and the response they received was, I'll just read it out. That it, quote, takes away from the intended use of the lot for the community. So I think, so why I'm bringing this today forward today is I would like to research, or the staff to research kind of what programs we have in place for a community request to use a surface parking lot in their neighborhood. Basically, yeah, I'd like to discuss that, you know, if anyone else has any experience or ideas with that in the past and amongst the board. So that's my background.
I don't know. Do you have any comments on that or aware of it?
So I just got back from vacation, and I haven't gotten through all my emails. So, but I love this conversation. I think that it's possible, I think that maybe the thought here is to challenge the statement, it's not the intended use of the facility.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and even though I understand that response, and I support that as the decision here in this particular case, what I'd like to challenge you all is, what is the intended use of a neighborhood lot? What are the impacts of a secondary use, if you will? Like, I'd like to say an activation of a parking lot. And is that appropriate for a city-owned facility? And what do y'all think? So I think that those are kind of my questions that I have. And and on my end of things, what I have done, and this was before I knew we were going to talk about this today, I've reached out to Office of Special Events, and I was like, I'd like to talk about this potential, because this is not the first time I've heard this, is could we use this lot for something? And I think the answer is, like, physically, yes. I mean, there's nothing impossible about activating a parking lot, but I'd like to think through what that policy would look like. What's that policy recommendation? What do you all think? What are the implications? Thinking about all the users and all the customers, and you know, and what is kind of the answer to the intended use of a parking lot? And then how often? Is there a fee associated with it? What does that program look like? So those are questions that I would pose for you all, and I'd love to hear your feedback and input on those thoughts. What do you think? That's it.
I was going to ask a clarifying. So has it been a market yet, or was this our attempt?
This is the second year of the market's operation.
What did you last year?
They were at City High School, but there is as far as I know, this may have been updated, but there's a contingency that use stops once the school year starts, which that coincides early September, which coincides with prime farmers market, you know, produce.
Did they want to start this year?
I believe it's sometime in
We have enough time to have a
late May.
discussion at our next meeting if it would impact operations throughout this year, or because I mean, just in general, going back to what we were talking about earlier, with businesses struggling, like there's been a number of closures on Plainfield. There's an opportunity. I don't know if is it a weekday or a weekend?
Saturday.
If there's an opportunity to look at the benefits, not just to the folks that can have the market there and the nearby residents, but it's also a potential boost for commercial corridors to have that type of street traffic, foot traffic moving around it. It seems like I like to find a way to get to yes, and it seems like this is a way that if we can frame a policy that gives more flexibility for the city to get to yes in a way that considers all input, I'd be happy to support that.
So I'll make a note. So with the Creston thing specifically, I hear a question of, can we go back and look at that? And obviously time is of the essence with the farmer's market that's what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah,
So
that-
let me look into that specific and see what was going on there. I may not know some details about some legalities or something, so let me go look at that for you all and I'll report back. But as far as, and I'll get with you about where the information came from and stuff. But as far as the kind of the greater conversation here, is that something you all feel like you could discuss a little bit for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
it should be very much easier for an organization to use the surface lots that they have in their community. I'm sure we have usage statistics for those lots, but even if it's a half of it, activating a surface lot is always a good thing. Yeah, I mean, whether that's a resident wanting to use the lot and reaching out to their neighborhood association, who then has a contact within Mobile GR to kind of expedite the request, or if that's resident-led, I think it should just be easier for people to use the spaces that they live near, the public spaces they live near.
I completely agree with this. I think in this particular case, it reminds me of our discussion and closure of approval of the residential permit parking program. So, I think this case in particular seems pretty obvious to me because it is resident-led. This is something that we're saying we want to be the case for, the policies that we have is have resident-led initiatives for what is possible in their community, and that's exactly what is happening here. So I would say for that, for this particular instance, it seems like a no-brainer. In terms of a larger conversation, I believe that, as has been said, activating these surface lots for other uses, it doesn't have to be all the time, not every day, not 24/7, but, once a week during the summer, something like that. I think that has only potential to be beneficial. Many studies have shown that having more foot traffic, having people feel safer to, walk around the streets in business districts, that is only ever helpful to local businesses. Even with the loss of parking, even temporarily, it's only ever helpful. So in my opinion, this is just a win-win situation. We can look at other uses for some of our lots, led by residents wanting to do something in their community, helping local businesses. It all is great.
Definitely, especially this case where you have the neighborhood associations, even a parking lot that's with a neighborhood. I mean, I think if the business association can be engaged too, but it does seem like a very good case for this.
I would, and then I'd think of the alternative, right? My frame of reference maybe for this is thinking about the East Town Bazaar, right? The streets are, if we don't have the lots, then we're shutting down the streets, and then, if there's that opportunity to, instead of shutting down a street, which East Town's not going to do that, then can we do that? And that can also limit the overall footprint and disruption as well.
Okay. So you'll look into it?
Yeah.
This one specifically, and then, okay.
And I'm also going to go back and just chat with staff a little bit about, if we were to activate a public space like a parking lot, is there something that currently on the books that we can use? We allow block parties in the public right of way. So, there may be a policy that kind of covers something like this that gives me a mechanism to say, yeah, we can do that. And then, but what I want to check on too is is there something in place that we could do this with? How do we do that? And then I hear what you guys are saying. These seem like good things that meet city goals and meet city strategies for community engagement and economic development and all those kind of good things. So let's, how do we make it a little easier to access and do? So I'll bring back some information, and I will look into this specific thing, so it's kind of time sensitive, but I'll bring back what I can find out. So thank you for bringing this up, though. I think it's a really good conversation, and I want to continue it.
Okay, thank you. Next are updates.
Okay, great. So you've got project updates in your report, and we're at 1:05 on time. I do want to take just a couple of minutes, and I have been thinking about our reporting structure in the back of your packet, so I know you all read every single word of this, right? So one thing I want to do is I want to make this easier for you to read. There's a lot of information back here, and I know you're all time is very, very valuable. What I'd like to do is give you the information that you need the most. Okay, so when you take a look at the project updates back here, they're kind of put into some different things. We've got them, our traffic engineering safety signals, and then also neighborhood traffic calming program, pavement markings, we're about to do all those this summer, your pedestrian streets and safety. We have a couple of notes in there about speed trailers, school safety, traffic signals, some more there, some more bicycle related work. Then you always have a dash, ridership and productivity update. And then you're also going to see something either from micromobility and or from your car share program. So all of your three micromobility or your three mobility programs are going to be in there. And what I would like to hear, and if this is something you can noodle on and we can talk about it next month, but I would like to know, when you look at this report, what would you really like to have? And I imagine shorter is probably a goal. But the other thing is if I'm going to make it shorter, you got to prioritize for me what information you really want to know. What do you get asked about? What would you think about? And so I want to leave that a little bit open-ended. I have some ideas about what I would want if I were in your seat, but I don't want to color your thoughts. So does anyone have anything top of mind that you're like, I'd really like to know this about what Mobile GR is doing?
I'm always curious kind of what planning efforts are going on about
Future iterations of programs that we have. So the
Okay.
Dash, DART, micromobility, et cetera.
Great. Anyone else?
I definitely think the stats on these programs are important.
Okay.
Ridership, mobility, keeping track of, micro-mobility, traffic. But to me, those are important.
I appreciate the narratives, but I think if there's certain things that you really want us to know every month, then just bullet it like up front with the metrics. Like those are the graphs are kind of what I gravitate to, but if you played with and then some of the background's good, but that really this is what you need to know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes it might be good for periodically to do a longer narrative on each of the sections. Just we want to focus on this, but to read looking at these, sometimes it's a lot of the same information. So to prioritize and then maybe figure out which ones we focus on.
Okay.
Yeah, I personally, I love seeing the ridership for the Dash every month because it makes me really happy. So
Makes me happy too every time.
every time I see it, I'd celebrate a little bit. I love having the updates on the success of the car share. I think this particular update, there was a lot of information. So something like that executive summary, like bullet points, this is the key takeaways would probably be helpful. And then I always look for what are the infrastructure improvements that we're making. The bike lanes, the pedestrian safety crossings, the hybrid beacons, everything. So I like knowing what's happening. Maybe like a map with what's going in.
Yeah, my overall general, even looking at the first couple of pages, what can we do to move away from complete sentences?
Yeah.
I'm an English major too, but just even the who, when, and where, who's involved, what's the timeline, and even looking at the bicycle related work, where is this work happening to? So yeah, I like those bullet points. I like the metrics. I'm cautious with metrics without a narrative. So keeping, balancing that.
Kevin,
What's that?
anything from you?
Oh, I just said already that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I
Okay,
did.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Aaron has something.
No, you're okay.
So just an update from our program, so we're working on streamlining that sort of like standard report that you're gonna get from the mobility program, so that'll be more consistent. And then we're also talking about doing like a quarterly kind of overview where we dig into that a little bit more as a presentation, so you can, have that come alive a little bit more for you. And then we're working on some kind of data standardization practices and procedures, including working across with the traffic safety team. So longer term, looking at other ways that we share out and coordinate reporting out information. Also, the car share memo in there is kind of broader history and background, so I promise not to give you a multi-page overview of all of that every time, but if you need kind of the whole snapshot, you get it this time.
Thanks, Erin. So Erin's just giving a little more context because obviously you all are making a lot of comments on the cool stuff you like to see from Erin's programs that she oversees. So the context there is Erin is actively working on how do she streamline the information that y'all want to see and is helpful for you in your daily work. So all of this feedback is really, really helpful to help inform kind of some of the ideas that Erin's already working on. So thanks so much. And did y'all have anything over here on this side of the table? Echo. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. This is super helpful. We will keep going. I am trying to make this helpful for you all because you are some of our biggest cheerleaders out there in the community and we appreciate it. Okay.
Got it.
The only other thing that I want to bring to your attention is that, so next month, we're going to be all about transit. I believe we're going to have Nick from the Rapid come and speak about the transit master plan. Is that correct? Yep. Okay, and also Max, I believe we've got to sort out some details, but I believe Max is going to do a Dash in review. So we're going to talk a lot about Dash, okay? And it's going to be fun. So we're going to do that next month. And our next month meeting, we were a week late this month. Thank you very much. That allowed me to go on vacation, the first vacation I've been on in a little while. And so we're a little bit compressed, so we'll see you the first week in May. And then in June, I know you all love it, we're going to talk more about parking. We are going to have our friends come chat with us. I'm looking at you, Max, this is correct, right? For the parking investment strategy, yes. Right? So Max is helping out on a project in the DDA boundary that is looking at inventorying what parking is here. The question I get all the time is, what's going to happen if people live here and they don't have any place to park? And I'm like, I think we have a lot of parking. So we're going to figure out what the number is for a lot. And then that project is also going to look at investment. And what that means, it could be a number of things. That could be things like activating a parking lot. That could be an investment tool. It could also mean, does there need to be parking investment, like actual parking spaces investment, and what does that look like, and how do we do that in a way that reaches goals that sometimes seem like competing goals, such as we want mobility for all users and we would like to have a little parking, and how do we put those two together, and how do we have a more balanced transportation system. So that is that project, and I'm just giving you a little teaser, and we're going to have our team come and talk with you about the overview of that project. They're in their infancy, they're collecting data, they're looking at things that are already there, and Max is helping out on that project. So we'll bring that to you also, that you're up to speed, because I'm sure there's already chatter about what are they doing over there, counting all the parking spaces. So, and we'll have you some more information about that. So that's coming up in May and June. I know it's a great time to be at the Lakeshore, but I hope you all still be able to be here. If you were not able to come to a meeting, please let us know in advance so that I can just, not expect you. And we also are trying to make sure that we have quorum so that you all can make decisions. The other thing we're going to do next month is I promise. Yes, I promise. I'm going to bring you your board rules back. They have gone through legal. We do have some little comments back, so we're going to bring you back the draft, and hopefully you guys can take action on that. We'll have some updated board rules. Great. All right? Anything, and just at this time, is there anything that in the next 2 months that needs to be brought to this agenda that I don't have from that quick teaser?
I guess a comment. It seems like we're very, very focused on the downtown. I would love to learn more about and I know we have them, but mobility initiatives in the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay. Great.
We could possibly have someone update this board on how the bike paths, the trail system is coming along, which is probably where you're headed with your questions, some of it.
Adjacent.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's scheduled to go from, at some point, Lowell to actually the lake.
Yeah.
So,
Unfortunately,
for all you
bypassing
bikers
a lot of
down there.
stuff. But
Okay.
And I would add, if there's time sensitivity to the piece with Caledonia or Plainfield you were mentioning, with the farmer's market,
Yeah.
and then around the business park, and if there's anything time sensitive there that needs a decision made before the season gets here, or
Oh, for sure.
whatever that prep, then I would say just those would be two other things. Yeah.
Okay,
Got it. Thank you all.
all right. Next is public comment. This is the commenting on any other matters. No one in the public, all right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Can I ask a commissioner question? A resident question?
I hope I can answer.